Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Risk Matrix. I see probably this week you all are probably at ASSP. Hopefully, you're either listening while you're there. James is here for the episode, but he's actually at ASSP, and he might even be speaking right now with his topic. But hopefully, you're having a good time. If you're listening, great. If you're not, I hope that you catch us later. So today we're going to
Catch us on
jump
the
right
way
in.
home. Catch us on the
Maybe
way
you're on
home
the
on
way.
that water.
Yeah. So we're going to jump right in with a rip from the headlines. James is already fired up, pulled something out that just tickled his fancy. So hit me, James.
Things that just get on my nerves about killing people at work. OSHA has issued $26,000 in penalties against the U.S. Postal Service after a worker died last year at a distribution center in Allen Park. Now get this. A worker was trapped in a conveyor belt. And when you got into the investigation, this is what OSHA found. The U.S. Postal Service failed to ensure that workers who were authorized to perform equipment repairs received lockout, tagout training, basic stuff. Workers were exposed to caught in and fall hazards while working on a hotel conveyor belt without a group lockout device. Basic stuff. The company failed to ensure procedures were followed amid shift and employee changes to minimize exposure to hazards. Right out of the standard, right? You got to have a process for group lockout during shift changes. And they failed to ensure its energy control procedures were followed. So what's that? Your periodic inspections, basic compliance activities within 1910-147. And now somebody's not coming home because of.
Yeah. And honestly, the fines for that, what did you say, 26,000, 27,000? That's not a whole lot of fines. So, I'm wondering if that's even going to be a deterrent, in the scheme of things. And we can go down that road another time about, whether or not the fines are enough. But that kind of leads us into today's topic a little bit, right? It's when OSHA, I had an article about this, when OSHA stops listening to your lip service and they start telling you to put your money where your mouth is, and maybe even some of this stuff goes criminal, right? I think a lot of companies, they see OSHA as a suggestion. Okay. And we've talked about this on many episodes here that OSHA is the bare minimum. OSHA is the bare minimum of what your safety program should reflect for protecting workers, right? And hopefully you go beyond the bare minimum, right? But there are some employers, and I've had some clients, and I know you have too, James, that treat OSHA's standards, OSHA's training requirements, all those things as suggested best practices, and they're not suggested best practices. They're the bare minimum of what we should be doing to protect our workers. So, in the news, I pulled out for this article quite a few examples of where people treated OSHA coming out and fining them, maybe $10,000-$20,000 as kind of a suggestion. They gave some lip service back, said they changed things, that they're doing things right. They modified what OSHA said they were going to modify. They signed that paper that says we abated. And then something big happens, or OSHA comes back and they find out that you actually didn't do what you said you were going to do. And OSHA's not taking it lightly.
Nope.
And some of these people are being fined $5 million, $2 million, right? And in states that have an appetite for it, states are suing, and they're taking people to jail.
Not to mention, now we're getting into gross negligence and wrongful death claims, which could result in compensatory and punitive damages on the civil side and litigation. And, it's somewhat frustrating. My experience with OSHA, particularly if it's the first time that you're engaged with an area director, even if you are out of compliance, if you show a willingness to abate, to correct it, you put systems in place so it doesn't happen again, you may still be penalized, but it's not these large penalties that you're seeing when you get to willful and repeat. Now, I want to comment about repeat for a second. So, for you companies that are doing things correctly, don't be so quick to settle and take a serious violation. Because if it comes back up again, I'll just pay it and go away, and I'm not going to go to the informal conference. And my case, I don't want to. I don't want any problems. I'm just going to get this in the mail. It says I got too serious. I got too serious. I'll pay it. I'll send the check in. I'm done. If that comes up again, that's a repeat. Okay, it could be considered to be a repeat. So I know we're going to get into where we're getting into the attitude of I don't care, right, in your paper. But even if you do care, understand when you settle with OSHA and take a serious citation, I always caution people to understand that puts you in that repeat violation category for the next 5 years. 5 years. So just keep that in mind when you're headed to the informal conference.
So, I guess the gist of my article is that OSHA doesn't hand out the harshest penalties, right, for honest mistakes.
That's
Because
right.
there are companies that maybe they run afoul of some of the safety standards and they get a penalty or a fine or a violation, and OSHA works with them, and they say they're going to abate it. Those aren't the people that OSHA's kind of getting ticked off about, right? What they're getting ticked off about is when a company says they're going to do something, documents that they did it when they didn't really do it, and OSHA has to come back and either the consequences are worse, there's been a death or an amputation or something that more serious, or they come back and they see that you lied about improving what you said you were going to improve, right? They hand these out to people for specific conditions, willful and repeat conditions, for people who basically treat OSHA's violations as suggestions. So when you get a violation, it's not a suggestion to fix your safety management system. It's not a suggestion to do the training. It is a you shall do this to
and you're
improve your.
signing that abatement under penalty of perjury. A company official signing off that you have putting these controls in place, typically as a settlement of the OSHA case that they have against you. And, people make mistakes. But some of the cases you put in your article, we've moved beyond mistakes. We've got a construction company here in Massachusetts that was hit with $4.7 million worth of fines in a tragic trench collapse that killed one worker. They cited the company for astounding 7 willful and 33 repeat violations. So we moved beyond, we don't know. We're into, I don't give a damn.
We knew, and I don't care.
Okay? 7 willful and 33 repeat. That means they've been cited at least one time in the previous 5 years for 33 separate violations. Now, hiring clients, hear me. How do you know that this contractor's not out on your job site? Contractors that hire subcontractors. How do you know that this company is not out there performing work in your name for that hiring client that you work so hard to get? You better go and see. Do your due diligence, exercise reasonable care, because when I see that we got a fatality with 7 willful and 33 repeat, that makes me angry,
Mhm.
very angry.
Well, I will say this too with pre-qualification systems, right? We do a check on all these things, but there is a lag time between getting information into the system and sometimes getting through. There's ways to delay. We've talked about before, delay, kicking the can down the road on OSHA violations and going to the OSHRC and contesting and all those things. So some of these things may not show up until it's too late, until you have hired this person and they are working on your job site. And if they already don't care enough to get $4 million worth of fines, you can bet your bottom dollar that they don't care what they're doing on your site either.
Well, that's one of the good things I like about how Force's system set up. They keep track of these. Yes, they want contractors to self-report, but whether they do or not, they have a constant API feed. So as soon as the investigation's open, as soon as it's closed and it hits the establishment search page for OSHA, you've got whatever the situation is involving this particular case, whether it was resolved, settled, contested, whatever. So that's great. But if you're a contractor and you're hiring a subcontractor, do you have that same type of due diligence? If you're a hiring client, hiring a contractor that hires subcontractors, have you got that visibility down to these workers? I guarantee you, this company in Massachusetts, if I did some research, they're a subcontractor for somebody. I promise you they are. Okay.
I
They were
work
on
in
the job
Massachusetts, right?
somewhere.
I do a lot of work in Massachusetts, right? So I'm gonna withhold uh direct
You
knowledge.
don't have to say. You don't have to say. I already know the answer.
So,
All right.
so let's talk a little bit about moving beyond. I mean, you can't do anything with I don't care, right? Unless you change the whole management system, you change out the people who don't care. And a lot of times, these smaller companies, they're the owners. They're the people who actually own the
Right.
business. They either don't care about their employees, they don't care about the
Yeah.
consequences, they don't care about the money, which most people usually, if anything else, they do care about the money, and they certainly hopefully care about going to jail, right? But if they truly don't care, you can't fix I don't care, okay?
There's no
But if you
safety
are
management
willing
system where I don't care.
but if you are willing, right, there are ways to avoid repeat and willful violations, and I kind of call this out in the article, right? One
You do.
one is close the loop on past citations, and that just doesn't mean you know sign the abatement thing or whatever. Make sure that if you get cited for something, that you fix the immediate hazard, but then you go beyond that and you look for other gaps in your safety management system and try to close other portions of holes in your safety management system. If you have a lockout tagout issue on a piece of machinery that OSHA has fined you on, go and look at your other lockout tagout places and programs and facilities, or work sites or work crews. You need to look at it in a systematic way so that you're closing the loop on that particular
100%.
infraction and beyond.
100%. 100%. And things, if you want to find a place to start on this, when you're looking at your past citations, let's say Hascom's one that's pretty regular. I'd say go look at the OSHA top 10 because they're there every year. It's a good place to start when you're doing self audits. But you may not have been at the company at the time these citations were issued. Now you're there as a safety professional. Go to the establishment search. Look at all of the locations in every state that's out there to see if you have been cited. You may not be familiar with what's going on in Texas if you're in Massachusetts, but you work for some very large company, right? So things happen that affect the organization from a systematic standpoint, from a citation standpoint. If they cite you for that infraction and there's a repeat in another area, they could cite you again. It does not have to be at that same facility.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So let's move on to number 2 in my article, right? Conduct rigorous safety audits. Now, this is something that, you know, you either get into the habit of doing it through your own system, or you have an outside party come in. And this goes back to your deep dives, contractor audits. It goes down to, if you have a high hazard job or a high profile job, to audit those types of jobs to see if your contractors are doing what they say, if you're doing what you say. But one of the things that we've also been doing, at least in my own professional practice recently, is, and we come in as a team, some lawyers that I work with and myself, and we put it under attorney-client privilege, and we look at everything in a company and produce something that people can use as something to improve to over time, right? And these are safety audits of everything in your facility, everything in your processes, and it gives you a really deep look into what if.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. If you're concerned that you're creating liability by conducting a safety audit that's in a deep dive situation like Dr. Martin's talking about, then have your inside counsel or outside counsel direct this and make it part of a protected assessment, right? Now you need to follow the rules when it comes to maintaining attorney-client privilege. Your counsel can go over that with you, but don't wait for OSHA to point out hazards. Don't wait for that's not their job. That's your job. Your job is to identify hazards and protect your workers. And one of the best places is going and doing your documented safety audits. That includes a field audit. But I'm going to add something to that. You also need to look at the safety management system, the underlying safety management system that supports those field activities. We can go out there and question a really gifted employee that knows a lot about lockout, tagout. But I need to see, have you done a periodic inspection on that lockout, on that person's lockout, tagout for that particular piece of machinery that they are performing energy isolation on? Yes or no, you either have it or you don't. Those are citable, right? Those are citable. So field audit, yes, 100%. Are we doing what we say we do? Well, let's go back and look at the management system underlying to see, can we prove things like training? Can we prove things like discipline?
You're stealing my thunder for number 3 and number 4, James.
Oh, my bad. My bad. My
No,
bad.
that's okay. Go ahead and steal it, and then we'll
No,
revisit
no.
it.
But that's part of the audit, right?
Yep, it's part of the audit. And so number 3, and we don't have to beat it to death because you and I have talked about this. In fact, we talked about it on our last episode, invest in training. And investing in training doesn't mean just buy something off the shelf or get a trainer in and have the trainer, do something, right? You need to be checking on what's in that training. You need to be checking on the credentials of the person who's giving the training and who's prepared the training if it's an online training. And you need to have a competency check. And I can't say this enough. I know I mentioned Veriforce every time that we talk about this. Veriforce has many courses where there's a competency check that's involved that actually looks at, once the training is done, can the worker do what you train them to do? Can they go in the field? Can they put on the harness? Can they inspect the harness? Can they tell you what the levels are that they have to comply with? All those things count when it comes with investing in training, right?
Right.
Training proves you're not indifferent to safety. Actually looking at what's in that training and can the people apply the training really brings that point home.
100%. Knowledge, skills, and abilities checks. Here's something: when you're doing your safety audits, stop and talk to employees, talk to workers, give them a short little checkup on hey, you're about to go into this confined space. Let's talk about how do you go about using that 4-gas monitor you got. Hey, you're the fire watch here for this hot work activity. Tell me what you're looking for. Just to make sure that the training is getting through. Just conducting training without knowledge transfer is just paper safety.
Just paper safety. And then the last one, you started to get into this when you were stealing my thunder, was keep meticulous records. And we cannot harp on this enough. If it wasn't documented, it didn't happen. Keep meticulous records of what you're doing, when you're doing it, who did it, when it was done, and when things were closed out. For example, if you're doing an abatement for OSHA, you need to make sure that you keep records, pictures, documentation, written logs, etc. Right? You need to document because that's the best defense you have.
100%. Document, even though if OSHA may not require you to document. I hear this all the time. OSHA doesn't tell me I got to document this inspection. Okay. How do you prove it was done if you didn't? Right.
And a lot of times that comes into play. I mean, you and I both have practices where we assist lawyers in cases against OSHA or, OSHA violations where we're trying to either get serious down to other than serious or get things taken off a list of violations. And the only way to do that is to show that you're proactive, to have the documentation that shows you did the training and you're very, into making sure that these things don't happen. And a
Right.
lot of times that goes a long way. Proactive compliance, meticulous records, that's the ultimate strategy. And again, I can't say enough. You can't fix I don't care. But if you do care, then there are many things that you can do to prevent getting into one of these situations that these companies that are being fined $5 million, $2 million, $3 million and having repeat and willful violations.
And do not lie, Doge. You may have to share uncomfortable truths. Trust me, that's not the first time they've heard it. Okay. But lying to a federal officer has severe consequences. You do not want to breach the good faith and trust between you and the area office. That's how you get into these willful charges, right? This indifference that you have. But beyond that, I want to say this, penalties, financial penalties when it comes from OSHA are expensive. The willful are super expensive. The repeater are super expensive. There's a chance of criminal prosecution if tied to a fatality. Let me tell you the biggest expense you have: loss of business opportunity. Okay. Loss of business
Right.
opportunity. I had a client several years ago that had multiple fatalities, multiple injuries, really good company, great safety or climate, great organizational culture. Unfortunate situation, but still it wiped out $350 million a year worth of business for the next 3 years. In a preventable incident, they weren't depraved, they cared. This wasn't willful or repeat. The OSHA penalties paled in comparison to the loss of business opportunity. And never forget, injuries to workers, these OSHA files, these things you see on the establishment shirts, they can be requested through Freedom of Information Act requests by plaintiffs' lawyers, and also these are routinely used as the basis for plaintiff litigation.
Well, this is a hard one, James. So I think we're going to end on that and let it kind of sink in. If you want to know more about this, you feel free to reach out to either James or I, or even Veriforce. They can help you with these deep dive contractor audits. They can help you look at your safety management system, be proactive, because the last thing you want to do is lose business, lose good faith, be in the public eye for not doing the right thing. Because the right thing it may not always be so easy, but it's easier than you think. So with that,
This is
James.
no art. We got a big old book to go by, right? We got a big old book to go by. Now we got AI. If we got a question, we can just go in there and ask
Yeah,
AI, right?
sometimes AI doesn't give you the right answer, so you got to check,
That's right.
right? You got to check.
Post that disclaimer at the bottom. You need to check this. This may not be correct.
That's right. It may not be true. So with that, James, I hope everybody has had a great ASSP. If you went to ASSP convention, if you're on your way home, if you're listening to this afterwards, I hope you had a great time. I hope you went to James' session. and you visited the Veriforce booth, because Veriforce is our sponsor. They help us do what we do and bring to you every week. So we're very thankful for them for sponsoring the Risk Matrix. And with that, James, you want to take
Hey,
us out?
yeah, I want to take us out, and I want to say, hey, I love working with Veriforce because they have the mission and the passion to bring workers home safe from high hazard jobs. That's their motto. That's their mission. That's been the guiding principle for us for almost, well, now over 30 years. But hey, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the Risk Matrix. We're available across all the podcast platforms. You know that. You really want to support us, hit that like, hit subscribe, helps with the algorithm, gets us out there. If we're on LinkedIn, share our post. It gets us out there to other people so we can keep delivering to you what we think is really good safety content to help you in your practice, to help you in the profession. So thank you again for supporting the podcast. Till next time, y'all keep bringing those workers home safe, and roll tide,
Roll
baby.
Tide.
Roll tide. Football's coming up. Out.
Out.